I came home after a 12-hour ER shift and found a note on my kitchen counter. We couldn't take care of her. Call CPS. That was the moment I realized my parents didn't just break my trust. They abandoned my daughter to strangers. And then flew to Hawaii with my sister's kids. If you've ever questioned whether your pain was real, or if your family ever made you feel like too much, this story might be the thing that finally makes you feel seen. The house was too quiet. Emily pushed the door open with her shoulder, one hand still gripping the keys, the other holding a cup of now cold hospital coffee. Her shift at the ER had lasted nearly 14 hours. Bloody scrubs, a dislocated shoulder, 3 traumas, and a teenage overdose that still pulsed behind her eyes. She was used to chaos. But this silence felt wrong. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and stepped into the kitchen. That's when she saw it propped against a salt shaker. Like it was just another recipe card. A note. Her mother's handwriting. Neat and formal. Sorry, sweetie. We just couldn't take care of her. Contact foster services. Love. Mom and Dad. Emily stared at it. She read it again. And again. Her breath caught somewhere between her ribs. The mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the tile floor. Where was Lila? She ran through the house. Bedroom, bathroom, living room. No pink backpack. No stuffed otter. No child's laughter. Just vacuumed carpets and hollow air. She called her parents. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. Her hands were shaking now. Her heart was galloping. She pressed the number for Child Protective Services, almost hoping they would laugh at her. Tell her it was a mistake. The voice on the other end didn't laugh. Yes. We do have a record of an 8-year-old girl named Lila Hartman, placed into emergency foster care last evening. The guardians cited an inability to continue care. Emily gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. I'm her mother, she snapped. I have full custody. I was working hospital shifts. They were babysitting for 3 days. 3 days, Mom. I understand this is upsetting. Please hold while I connect you with the caseworker assigned to her file. The line clicked. Soft jazz played. Emily felt like she was in a nightmare. She turned toward the fridge for stability, and that's when her phone buzzed. Instagram. A notification from her sister Sophie's account. Emily almost didn't open it, but her thumb moved on its own. The photo loaded slowly. Her parents, smiling, on a beach in Maui, wearing matching Hawaiian shirts and leis. Her father's arm draped around Sophie's son Jackson. Her mother holding Sophie's daughter Madison in her lap. Both laughing. Caption: Surprise family vacation. So grateful for Mom and Dad. Nothing like making memories with the grandkids. Ohana, blessed life. Family first. Emily blinked. No. 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 She zoomed in on the timestamp. Posted last night. The same night, her daughter had been handed over to strangers. A scream clawed its way up her throat but came out as a choked sob. They had lied. They had looked her in the eye 3 nights ago. Nodded solemnly when she begged them to watch Lila, her voice nearly cracking as she explained the pileup on I-64. The shortage of nurses. The lives at stake. They'd promised. Just 3 nights. She had said, I'll pack everything. Lila will be easy. Her mother had sighed but agreed. Emily had packed Lila's things with military precision pajamas. her allergy meds, snacks, bedtime storybook, stuffed otter, and a labeled meal plan. She'd hugged her daughter tight and whispered, "Be extra sweet. Okay, Grandma and Grandpa get overwhelmed. And now this." They had abandoned her daughter and fled to paradise. Emily's legs gave out, and she sank onto the kitchen floor, the phone still in her hand, the broken mug beside her, like debris from a life that just exploded. It wasn't just betrayal. It was dismissal, erasure, a declaration that Lila didn't matter. And the worst part, she should have seen it coming. She thought back to last Christmas, when Jackson got a brand new gaming console and Lila got a puzzle from the clearance rack. Or Lila's ballet recital that they forgot about, but managed to drive 3 hours for Madison's first tap class the month before. Every slight, every excuse. Lila had asked her once, "Do Grandma and Grandpa love Jackson and Madison more?" Emily had lied. "No, baby. They just show it differently." She hadn't believed it herself. Her parents had always favored Sophie with the lawyer husband and perfect suburban home. Sophie, who never worked nights, never showed up tired, who made parenting look like an Instagram ad. Emily, the single mother, the ER nurse with unbrushed hair and forgotten birthdays, was the footnote, the emergency contact, the fallback plan. But even she hadn't believed they'd go this far. They had thrown Lila away, and now strangers were comforting her, tucking her into bed, telling her that her mommy would come soon. Emily gritted her teeth. This wasn't just a mistake. It was abandonment. And they would answer for it. She picked up the phone again, dialing with a steadier hand now. "Yes. This is Emily Hartman, Lila Hartman's mother. I want to speak to her caseworker right now." The phone at Child Protective Services rang 5 times before someone picked up. Emily gave her full name, explained the emergency, and waited. Her jaw clenched tight enough to hurt. Lila was safe, the woman assured her, in a temporary placement. No one had hurt her. But the ache in Emily's chest wouldn't subside. After hanging up, she curled up on the couch, not to rest, but to breathe. In, out, in, out. The silence in the house had never felt so loud. Somewhere in the stillness, the memories began to leak in, uninvited, like smoke under a closed door. She was 6 again. It was her school's reading competition. Emily had spent weeks practicing, carefully enunciating every word of Charlotte's Web to beat out a 5th grader in the finals. She came home holding the first-place ribbon with both hands, cheeks flushed with pride. Her mom glanced up from the kitchen. "That's nice. Honey, did Sophie finish her ballet class early? I need to get her ready for the recital." No congratulations. No mention of the win. No photograph to hang on the fridge. That weekend, the entire family drove 3 hours for Sophie's performance, where she played a daisy in the 2nd row. Her father clapped so loud it startled the audience. Emily had clapped too, even when no one clapped for her. She was 12 when she won a statewide math competition. Her teacher wrote a personal letter home, praising her work ethic and leadership. Her father barely skimmed it. "Let's not get too full of ourselves," he said, tossing the letter aside. "Nobody likes a show-off." Meanwhile, Sophie once got a C in biology, and it was treated like a national emergency. A tutor was hired. Sophie was comforted. And Emily overheard her mother whisper, "She just needs more support." She's more sensitive than Emily. At 16, Emily stopped expecting them to notice anything. She studied late, cooked her own meals, did her own laundry. When their father lost his job for a year, it was Emily who worked at the grocery store after school to help pay bills. Sophie. She cried and locked herself in her room. Emily didn't cry. She couldn't afford to. Her mother once said, during a particularly tense moment at the dinner table, "Sophie is easier to love. You've always expected too much from people." The words had lodged in her like a splinter. Not fatal, but always there. By college, Emily had mastered the art of disappearing. She chose nursing over medicine. Not because she wasn't smart enough, but because she didn't want to chase approval anymore. She wanted to help people who saw her. And when Lila came into her life during her last year of nursing school, unexpected, fragile, and perfect, something in her cracked wide open. For the first time, she loved someone without fear of being unloved back. But now, it was happening again. Her parents had looked at her child, the one who had never asked for anything but love and bedtime stories, and decided she wasn't worth the effort. She wasn't Jackson or Madison. She wasn't easy. They hadn't just abandoned Lila. They had repeated history. And Emily had let them. She hadn't known how deep the wound went until now. She stood up, walked to the hallway, and opened the closet where old boxes were stored, rummaging past winter coats and forgotten photo albums. She found a tattered shoebox marked E. High School. Inside were fragments of a girl who had once hoped to be noticed, certificates, programs with her name circled, even a dried-up corsage from her solo prom night. There was also a card, unsigned, but clearly her own mother's handwriting. "We're proud of everything you do, even if we don't always say it." Emily stared at the card. She had no memory of receiving it. Had she made it up, wished it into existence, or had it been slipped into a stack of homework? Lost in the shuffle. Did it matter? No words now could undo what was done. She sat back down, the box in her lap, and thought of Lila, her big eyes, her soft curls, the way she counted the stars every night through her window and named them after characters from their favorite bedtime stories. How would Lila remember this? Would she remember being left with strangers? Would she remember feeling like a burden? Emily's chest tightened. No. She couldn't let that happen. She wouldn't pass this cycle down. She reached for her phone and began typing. Not to her parents. Not yet. To Lila's caseworker. To her supervisor at the hospital. To a lawyer friend who once offered help anytime. She was done waiting to be seen. She would be loud. She would be messy. She would be enough. Because if her parents had taught her anything, it was what not to be. And she was finally ready to be something different. For herself. For her daughter. For the child she once was. Who deserved so much more than silence. The waiting room at Child Protective Services was fluorescent lit and cold. Despite the June heat outside, Emily sat with her hands clenched in her lap. A clipboard of intake paperwork abandoned on the seat beside her. She had filled out everything they asked again, but no form could explain what had been taken from her. A caseworker named Andrea appeared from a side door. Her expression, calm but not cold. "Emily Hart?" she asked gently. Emily stood immediately. "Yes. Please tell me where my daughter is." Andrea nodded and motioned for her to follow. "Let's talk in my office." Inside, The room was lined with faded posters about child safety and resilience. A small potted plant sat by the window, fighting valiantly for light. Andrea closed the door behind them and took her seat. "We've verified your identity and your custody status. Legally, you're Lila's sole guardian. We're working to expedite reunification." Emily exhaled. Part relief, part rage. But Andrea continued, glancing at the file. "Your parents told us they couldn't reach you, that they were acting in the child's best interest due to your extended absence. They claimed you left Lila without a return plan." Emily's stomach twisted. "That's a lie," she snapped. "I asked them to babysit while I worked 3 night shifts. I gave them dates. I packed meals. I was going to pick her up Friday morning." Andrea tilted her heel. "Do you have any messages or call logs that show that arrangement?" Emily pulled out her phone and scrolled quickly. "Here are texts from Tuesday. Me, confirming drop-off at 6 p.m. Pick up Friday." My mom replied, "Fine. Bring her own food." Andrea looked over the messages, nodding slowly. "That aligns with your story. I'll include this in the report. But I need you to know Lila was brought in with minimal belongings. New documentation. New emergency contact form. Your parents stated that you had vanished. They abandoned her." Emily whispered. Andrea's voice softened. "Yes. But thankfully, we placed her in a licensed emergency foster home that has experience with trauma cases." Emily's heart thudded. "Where is she?" "The Martinez family. They're about 20 minutes away. Would you like me to call ahead and arrange a visit?" "No," Emily said, standing. "I'll go now. Please. I need to see her." The Martinez home was a modest 2-story with wind chimes on the porch and bright marigolds lining the walkway. Emily's breath hitched as she stepped out of her car. Her shoes crunched on the gravel, each step echoing the urgency in her chest. The door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 50s with soft brown eyes and silver-streaked curls stepped out. "You must be Emily," she said, offering a gentle smile. "I'm Maria Martinez. Lila's inside. In the sunroom. She's been very quiet. But she's safe." Emily could only nod. Her throat had tightened so badly she couldn't speak. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and something sweet baking. The sunroom was filled with light and soft cushions and watercolor drawings taped to the windows. And in the center of it all, Lila. She sat cross-legged on a beanbag chair, hugging her worn stuffed bunny, Webster. Her hair was slightly tangled. And her eyes. Emily's eyes looked so much older than 8. "Lila," Emily breathed. Lila turned slowly. There was a second of silence. Then the bunny hit the floor, and Lila bolted into her mother's arms. "Mommy," she cried. "You came." Emily dropped to her knees, arms wrapping around her daughter so tightly she thought she'd never let go again. "I'm here," she whispered into her daughter's hair. "I'm here. Baby. I will always come back for you." They stayed like that, time suspended, until Lila's little voice broke the moment. "Did I do something wrong?" Emily pulled back just enough to see her face. "What Grandma said. Sometimes, mommies need breaks," Lila said, her voice barely audible. "She said you were tired of taking care of me, that you needed a long rest." Emily's breath hitched like a punch to the chest. No, sweetie. Never." She cradled Lila's face. That is not true. You did nothing wrong. I love you more than anything in the world. Then why did they leave me with strangers? Lila's lip trembled. Why didn't they just wait for you to come back? Because they never waited for me either. Emily thought. Not when I was scared. Not when I needed them. And now they've done it again to you. But she couldn't say that. Not yet. Instead, she held her daughter tighter and whispered, I'm so sorry. Baby. I didn't know they would do this. I trusted them. But it will never happen again. I promise you. Behind them. Maria quietly stepped away to give them space. When they finally stood up, Emily noticed the little drawings taped to the window. Stars. A bunny. A house with a crooked chimney. Did you draw these? She asked. Lila nodded. I wanted to remember home. Emily touched her daughter's cheek. We're going home soon. But this time, we build it our way. Okay, Lila nodded, nestling back into her arms. And in that moment, Emily understood something terrifying and true. She had always been the forgotten child. And now, her daughter had joined the legacy. No more. Not again. It ends with me. The sun cast long amber beams through the Martinez kitchen window, painting the tiled floor in soft gold. Emily sat in silence at the wooden table. Then her hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug filled with chamomile tea. Her palms were still shaking, though the warmth helped. Across from her, Maria Martinez moved around the kitchen with a quiet rhythm, pulling a tray of cornbread from the oven. She didn't ask too many questions. She didn't press for details. She simply made space in her kitchen, in her home, and now, in Emily's storm-rattled world. In the living room, Mr. Martinez sat with Lila, helping her build a cardboard puzzle of sea creatures. Lila's soft giggles floated in every now and then, still tentative, like a melody she'd forgotten the lyrics to. Maria set the tray down, then eased into the chair beside Emily. Eat, she said with a smile. You can't pour from an empty cup, and definitely not on an empty stomach. Emily tried to smile, but her face felt heavy. Maria waited, then gently asked, Do you want to talk about it? Emily hesitated, but the words broke through. My parents left her, dropped her at an agency, told her I needed a break. Maria exhaled slowly. I'm sorry. I begged them for 3 nights. Just 3. Emily whispered. I packed everything. Wrote instructions. I didn't know they were flying to Hawaii. I didn't know they could be that cruel. Maria nodded, then rested a hand over Emily's. Her voice softened. Can I tell you something? Emily nodded, bracing herself. I was left outside a church in Santa Fe when I was 3 weeks old, wrapped in a blue towel. No name. No note. Emily's brows rose. You. Maria smiled faintly. The nuns named me Maria. I lived in orphanages, then foster homes. I was adopted at age 6 by the Martinezes, Enrique and Alma. They were older, quiet, but they chose me. Every day. She paused, watching Emily carefully. I broke plates. I wet the bed. I once ran away and hid in a neighbor's shed. And they never raised their voices. They just sat with me, fed me, and made me feel safe. Emily's voice trembled. How did you ever learn to trust again? By watching them love me with actions, Not just words, Maria said. And learning that love that is chosen, not obligated, is often the truest kind. A tear spilled down Emily's cheek. I thought I was the problem. I thought if I were better, kidder, more helpful, they'd finally see me. Maria reached over and took her hand. Their blindness doesn't define your worth. Their love came with conditions. That's not your failure, that's their limitation. From the living room came a voice. Mom. Lila appeared in the doorway, holding her stuffed daughter Webster by one ear. Can I have more of that cornbread? Maria chuckled. Standing. With honey this time, Lila nodded shyly. Then she glanced back at Emily. Then at Maria. Can I ask something? She said softly. Anything? Emily replied. She pointed at Maria. Can she be my other grandma? The kitchen fell silent. Maria knelt down, eyes filled with quiet surprise. Sweetheart, she said. I would be honored. But only if your mommy says yes. Emily wiped her tears and nodded. If she makes you feel safe. Then yes. Lila beamed. Then skipped back into the living room, clutching Webster. Maria rose slowly, brushing a hand under her eye. Kids know. You know, she said to Emily. They know who makes them feel seen. Emily leaned back, exhaling for what felt like the first time in hours. I was always told family was blood. Obligation. That love meant sacrifice. Even if it hurt. Maria shook her head. Family isn't who shares your DNA. It's who shares your load. For the first time in days, Emily felt the tight fist in her chest begin to loosen. A stranger had offered what her own mother never could: safety. Softness. No strings. That night, Emily tucked Lila into bed in the Martinez guest room. The little girl looked up and whispered, Mommy. Yes. Baby, are we safe now? Emily kissed her forehead. Yes. Sweetheart. We're safe. And we're loved. And that, finally, was enough to sleep. Emily couldn't sleep. Not because of the unfamiliar guest bed at the Martinez home, or the way Lila murmured in her sleep while clutching Webster, but because of the silent scream inside her chest, a scream that had been building for 32 years. Tonight, it demanded to be heard. At 3:17 a.m., she got up, careful not to wake Lila, and made her way to the Martinez family's small kitchen. She opened her laptop, logged into her phone provider account, and downloaded the call history from the past 3 days. Then she pulled up the photo her sister Sophie had posted their parents in matching Hawaiian shirts, holding piña coladas, smiling with Sophie's 2 children in front of a beach sunset. The timestamp 5:04 p.m. The same time Child Protective Services had placed Lila in emergency foster care. She saved the photo, her hands trembling. Then she opened a new document titled Timeline of Neglect and Fraud and began typing. The next morning, she sat across from her friend Rachel, a family law attorney, at a cafe near downtown. The last time they met, they were celebrating Lila's 7th birthday. This time, Emily's voice was raw from rage and no sleep. They lied to CPS. They claimed I was unreachable, that I had abandoned my daughter. But I have call logs, text messages, the arrangement messages. And this, she turned her phone to show Rachel the Hawaii post. They left Lila and flew to paradise. Rachel leaned in, reading quickly. You have a case. potentially 2 child abandonment, and filing a false report to a government agency. If we can prove premeditation, it's even more serious. They booked the trip 3 months ago, Emily said. And they still said yes to watching her, knowing they'd vanish. Rachel's eyes hardened. That's not just neglect. That's calculated betrayal. Later that day, Emily confronted her sister. Sophie was folding laundry in her spacious living room. A perfect spread of Pottery Barn catalogs and Pinterest energy. The television played cartoons for her son while the baby monitor buzzed with her daughter's soft whimpers upstairs. You knew, didn't you? Emily asked without greeting. Sophie turned. Knew what that mom and dad were planning to dump my daughter into foster care so they could go sip mai tais with you. Sophie rolled her eyes. They didn't dump her. They made arrangements. And they needed a break. You act like they're criminals. Emily's laugh was sharp. They filed paperwork saying I was unavailable indefinitely. They didn't even tell CPS I existed. They just panicked. You're blowing this out of proportion. Like always. Emily stepped closer. Her voice cold. No. Sophie. You're just used to living in a world where your kids get organic snacks and ballet recitals, while mine gets left behind with strangers. Sophie flinched. That's not fair. What's not fair is an 8-year-old asking if her mom abandoned her. What's not fair is being told your whole life that you ask for too much when all you ever wanted was to be treated the same. Sophie shook her head. You're just angry. Emily looked her dead in the eye. No. I'm done being invisible. I'm done being the responsible one who gets punished while you get praised for existing. Sophie crossed her arms. You're always the victim. No. Emily whispered. I've always been the daughter they could afford to lose. The words stunned even her. Sophie had no reply. Back home that night, Emily sat with Lila and helped her draw planets and stars. Her daughter's hand was steady again. Her voice had gained some confidence. But when Lila asked, "Are Grandma and Grandpa coming back?" Emily said simply, "Not for a while." Then she opened her email. Attached the timeline. The social media evidence. The CPS report. She filed a formal complaint for child endangerment and intentional misrepresentation. The case moved quickly. Detective Barnes from the Family Protection Unit called 2 days later. We've reviewed your materials. This isn't negligence. It's coordinated. I'm recommending the DA open a criminal investigation. Rachel advised her through each step language to use. What not to say. How to document everything Lila shared in therapy. They prepared witness lists: the school attendance officer, the social worker who received Lila, even Mrs. Martinez, who had heard Lila repeat her grandmother's chilling words. Sometimes mommies need long breaks. That phrase echoed like poison. 3 days later, the phone rang again. It was her mother. Emily didn't answer. Then, her father. She let it go to voicemail. She played it only once. Emily. What you've done. It's humiliating. CPS. The police. All because of a misunderstanding. You need to fix this. Fix this. As if she were the one who broke it. In therapy, Lila drew a house with no doors. When Dr. Thompson asked why, she said, "Because sometimes people you love come in. And they leave. And they don't come back." Emily cried in the car afterward. But this time, it wasn't just grief. It was rage fueled by love. I will never let her believe she was the problem. She vowed aloud. The final step came when Rachel asked, "Do you want to seek a restraining order?" Emily paused, then nodded. Not for revenge. But to send a message love doesn't mean access. It means responsibility. And finally, she sat in her kitchen that night and wrote something for herself. A letter she would never send. Dear Mom and Dad. You always said I was too much. Too loud. Too needy. Too emocional. But maybe you were just too little. Too limited. Too afraid to love someone who didn't fit your mold. I used to think I had to earn your love by being less messy. Less angry. Less hurt. Now I know the truth. You didn't fail me because I was too much. You failed me because you were too little to meet me where I stood. But I'm not standing still anymore. She signed it. And then she hit delete. Because she no longer needed their validation. Only justice. And healing. 3 days after filing the complaint, Emily walked into the CPS office for the final meeting. Her palms were damp. But her heart beat with something steadier than fear. It was resolve. She wasn't here to ask for her daughter back. She was here to reclaim her. Across the table, Andrea, the assigned caseworker, smiled as she slid the final documents across the desk. We've completed the verification process. You're officially restored as Lila's sole legal guardian. Emily signed with a shaky hand. Tears brimming. Thank you for believing me. Andrea placed a comforting hand over hers. You never needed to prove you were a good mother. You just needed a chance to protect her. When Emily arrived at the Martinez house to bring Lila home, the child ran into her arms with such force it nearly knocked her over. You came back, Lila whispered, burying her face in Emily's shoulder. Always, Emily murmured. No matter what. They left hand in hand. Webster, the stuffed otter, clutched tightly between them. Back at home, everything felt smaller. Quieter but also sacred. Emily had scrubbed every surface. Replaced Lila's bedsheets with fresh ones. Even added glow-in-the-dark stars to her ceiling. The trauma still lived in the walls. But she wanted the room to feel like a sanctuary. That night, after a dinner of mac and cheese and apple slices, Lila looked up from her bowl and asked, Mom, if I was better, like, more fun or something, do you think Grandma and Grandpa would have taken me to Hawaii? Emily froze. Her fork clattered onto her plate. What makes you ask that? Baby. Lila's voice was soft. They always do stuff with Jackson and Maddie. Maybe I just wasn't good enough. Those words split something open inside her. Emily knelt beside her daughter and cupped her face. Lila. Sweetheart, listen to me. This is very important. You were never the problem. What they did says everything about them. And nothing about you. Lila's lips trembled. But Grandma said you needed a long break from me. Emily's throat closed. A familiar shame clawed at her ribs. One she hadn't felt in years. Because deep down, once upon a time, she'd ask herself the same question. When she was Lila's age. When her own mother left her dance recital early. Saying, you were too intense. Sophie's easier to love. I thought it was my fault too. Emily said. Her voice breaking. When I was little, I thought if I was quieter, easier, maybe I'd be loved more. But I was wrong. And so are you. Lila leaned into her. The weight of generations resting on Emily's chest. Therapy began the next week. CPS had arranged for a trauma-informed child therapist, Dr. Chen, who specialized in helping children process betrayal and abandonment. Emily sat in the waiting room during the first session, legs bouncing, fingers twitching. When Lila emerged, she looked subdued but lighter somehow. She said it's okay to feel mad. Lila whispered, and that it doesn't mean I'm bad. That night, Emily journaled. For the first time in years, the page read, Lila thinks she has to earn love. And the cruel part. That's exactly what I've spent my whole life trying to do too. Boundaries became the next frontier. Emily blocked her parents' numbers. When Sophie texted demanding she stop embarrassing the family, Emily didn't respond. She changed the locks on her apartment, told the school to remove her parents from the emergency contact list. She informed her landlord and neighbors that no one was to be given access to her unit without her consent. At the next session, Dr. Chen invited Emily in for the final 10 minutes. We've been working on identifying safe and unsafe people, she said. Lila made a list. Would you like to see? Emily nodded. At the top, written in big, uneven letters, was Safe Mommy. Dr. Chen. Mrs. Martinez. Emma at school. Webster. Emily laughed through tears. Webster's getting promoted. Then, underneath you, unsafe Grandma, Grandpa, Sophie. And finally, in smaller print, I feel better when they're far. Dr. Chen said gently. Children often internalize a guilt. But the more truth they're given, the freer they become. Emily took the list and pressed it to her heart. Weeks passed. Sleep became less interrupted. Lila stopped flinching when the phone rang. They went back to Saturday pancakes, bedtime stories, walks in the park with no invisible shadow trailing them. Still, the healing wasn't linear. One night, after a birthday party where a grandparent brought handmade cupcakes for another child, Lila asked, "Do you think they miss me at all?" Emily didn't lie. Maybe. But missing someone doesn't mean they know how to love them right. Lila nodded. Good. Because I don't miss them. One Sunday morning, Emily took Lila to the beach. The wind was strong, the kind that tugs at your soul and dares you to let go. Lila ran ahead, chasing the tide, laughing. Emily watched her and thought, this is my daughter. Not a burden. Not a mistake. Not something I need to apologize for to my family. She's everything I never had. And everything I never knew I needed. And me, I'm not too much. I'm just finally enough. It had been 3 weeks since Emily had blocked her parents' numbers. 3 weeks since she had stopped checking for an apology that would never come. The silence from her family was both a relief and a weight proof that she had made the right choice. And also a cruel confirmation they would rather lose her than reflect. Lila was adjusting. Slowly. The nightmares had decreased. And her laughter was returning like the tide, unpredictable but persistent. Emily focused on the present: therapy, stability, a safe home. Still, there were quiet hours where the ache of absence crept in. The kind of ache that had less to do with her parents and more to do with the dream of what they could have been. On a cloudy Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Emily opened the door and froze. It was Judith, her former mother-in-law, Eric's mother. They hadn't spoken much since the divorce cordial exchanges at holidays. the occasional birthday text for Lila. But she stood there now, holding a pie and a look that felt equal parts gentle and defiant. "I heard what happened," Judith said softly. "And before you say anything, I'm not here to defend anyone." Emily stepped aside. Wordlessly, they sat at the kitchen table, the pie untouched between them. Lila was in her room, painting constellations on her ceiling. "I saw the news online," Judith continued. "And then I called Eric. He didn't know much, but what he did say broke my heart." Emily looked away, blinking hard. They left her with strangers. And Lead then flew off, like she didn't exist. "I know." Judith's voice trembled. "And that's why I'm here." Emily braced for an awkward apology or a veiled plea to reconcile with her parents. Instead, Judith reached across the table and took her hand. "You and Lila are not alone. You never were. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up. And I'm here now because I want to." Emily didn't expect the tears, but they came anyway. Judith squeezed her hand. "What they did was unforgivable. But don't let their absence make you forget what love can still look like." After a pause, she added, "Would it be all right if you and Lila came over for dinner next weekend? Just a small meal. No pressure. Just warmth." Emily stared at her, startled by the simplicity of the gesture. No performance. No expectations. Just an open door. "I'd like that," she said. And for the first time in weeks, she meant it. Sunday evening, Emily told Lila. Judith had called it family dinner, but made it clear that there would be no speeches. No dress codes. No forced hugs. Just lasagna and laughter, if they were willing. Lila's eyes lit up. "Can I bring Webster, of course?" Emily smiled. "And can I draw her a picture? One with stars?" Emily nodded. She'd love that. That Friday, they walked up the path to Judith's house. It was the same white brick cottage Emily remembered from early years of motherhood. But tonight, it felt different. Not like a remnant of a failed marriage, but like a sanctuary being offered freely. Judith opened the door in an apron, flower on her cheek. "There's my girls," she said. And Lila ran into her arms like she'd done 100 times before. But this time with intention. The table was set with mismatched plates and candlelight. The smell of fresh bread and roasted vegetables filled the air. It wasn't grand, but it was real. At dinner, Judith asked Lila about school, about painting the stars, about Webster's latest adventures. Not once did she bring up Emily's parents. Not once did she ask probing questions or offer unsolicited advice. She was simply present. After dessert, cherry pie with vanilla ice cream, Lila yawned and curled up on the couch. Judith handed her a fuzzy blanket, kissed her forehead, and turned to Emily. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Of course. When Eric and I divorced, I blamed you. Quietly. I thought you broke his heart. But then I watched how you raised Lila. How fiercely you loved her. How steady you were. Even when things got hard. And I realized whatever happened between you and Eric, you've always shown up for your daughter." Emily's eyes filled. "I tried." "You did more than try," Judith said. "You stayed. You protected. You gave her safety when others gave her fear." Emily sat back, exhausted and full, in a way she hadn't felt in months. Maybe years. She asked me last week if you could be her new grandma. Emily said quietly. Judith's eyes brimmed. Then I'll be the kind she deserves. If you'll let me. That night, Emily drove home with Lila asleep in the back seat. The roads were quiet. The stars above were visible, scattered like promises across the sky. She thought about how hard she'd fought to protect Lila. She thought about the line that had been crossed and the line she'd drawn to say no more. But more than that, she thought about the open door, the warm table, the gentle touch of someone who chose them. Family, she realized, wasn't something you inherited. It was something you built one honest connection at a time. And in that truth, she felt something break open. Something healing. Something holy. The idea came to her one morning, just as the kettle began to whistle. Write it all down. Not for them. Not to send. Just to empty what had been filling her chest for 33 years. Emily sat at the small desk in the corner of her bedroom. The same desk she had once used to write college essays while Lila napped in a bassinet beside her. She pulled out a sheet of linen paper and began. Dear Mom and Dad, you probably don't remember the day you missed my high school graduation. You were at Sophie's dance recital across town. You said I'd understand when I had kids of my own. You were wrong. I don't understand. And I don't think I ever will. The pen moved faster than she expected. The words flowing not from bitterness, but from a deep place of ache. You made me believe love was conditional. That I had to earn my place by being useful, quiet, undemanding. I learned to apologize before speaking, to smile when I felt unseen. I stopped bringing home good news because I realized you wouldn't celebrate unless it involved Sophie. You taught me that needing anything from you was weakness. That my hurt was inconvenience. That being strong meant being silent. She paused, took a breath, then continued. And yet, when Lila was born, I still came to you. I still hoped, because part of me thought maybe being a mother will finally make me enough for you. But even when she called you Grandma, even when she looked up to you with those wide, hopeful eyes, you chose someone else. Again. You didn't just leave me this time. You left her. Tears blurred her vision. But her hand did not stop. You left her in the hands of strangers so you could sit on a beach with Sophie's kids and drink from coconuts. And she asked me, with trembling lips and tearful eyes, did I do something wrong? Mommy, am I too much? And all I could think was, I used to ask the same thing. Emily put the pen down for a long moment. Then she picked it up for the final lines. I forgive you. Not because you've apologized. Not because you're owed forgiveness. But because I'm tired of carrying the weight of people who never chose me. I forgive you not for your sake, but for mine. Because I deserve peace. Sincerely, Emily. She folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and placed it in the back of her journal. She wouldn't send it. That wasn't the point. The point was that it no longer needed to live inside her. Later that morning, she helped Lila pack her school bag, a banana, her reading folder, her stuffed otter Webster, always along for the ride. They walked to the car together, hand in hand, the air crisp with early spring. As Emily buckled her daughter into her booster seat, Lila looked up with a serious expression. Mama. Yes. Sweetheart, are you sure you're coming back to get me today? Emily's breath caught in her throat. Not because she was hurt, but because she understood the question better than she wished she did. She crouched down to eye level. I came back for you from something scarier than school, she said, brushing a curl away from Lila's cheek. I came back from the worst kind of place. And I would do it again 1,000,000 times. Lila blinked. Even if it's really far, even from the ends of the earth. Emily whispered. Even from the dark. Even from the places nobody else would go. I will always come back for you. Lila's eyes shimmered. She gave a small nod. Then whispered, okay, and hugged her tightly around the neck before climbing into her seat. On the drive to school, Emily glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror. Lila was humming softly. Webster tucked under her arm. The road ahead was lined with cherry blossoms, the pink petals fluttering like tiny notes from the universe. When they reached the school drop-off line, Emily parked and walked her to the gate. Other parents waved, distracted by coffee cups and backpacks. Emily crouched again, kissed Lila's forehead, and said it one more time, just in case. I'll be right here at 3:15. Same spot. Like always. Lila smiled now. More sure. Okay. Mama. Love you. Love you more. As Emily stood at the gate watching her daughter walk away, the echoes of her own childhood flickered in the back of her mind. But this time, they didn't sting. They were just echoes. No longer chains. She had broken the cycle. And in doing so, she had given her daughter what she never had. The promise of return. The email arrived late, nearly midnight, when the house had gone still and the only sound was the soft rustling of Lila's quilt as she turned in her sleep. Subject line, thank you for being brave. First. Emily almost deleted it. It looked like spam at first glance. But something about that title pulled at her. She clicked. Dear Emily. I don't know you. I only know your story, how your parents left your daughter so they could sip cocktails in paradise. All how you stood up for her. And for the little girl you once were. I've never seen someone put into words the ache I've carried all my life. I'm a single mom too. And for years, I've let my parents treat my son like a guest in their lives while showering my brother's kids with love. I kept quiet. I told myself to be grateful for whatever scraps they gave. But your story changed something in me. Yesterday, I told them no more. I told them they don't get to be in my son's life unless they treat him with the respect he deserves. I was shaking the whole time, but I did it. I just wanted to say, thank you. For going first. For showing me it's okay to walk away. And still be whole. Ava J. Emily stared at the screen. The cursor blinking beneath those final words. She didn't realize she was crying until one tear landed on her wrist. The next morning, Lila stood in the kitchen, trying to pour cereal into a bowl twice the size of her head. Need a hand? Sweetie, Emily asked, stepping in before the entire box emptied onto the counter. Mama, Lila said, serious and small. Do you think you would have still loved me if I was different? Emily froze. What do you mean? Different, Lila shrugged. Like, cuter. Or easier. Or not so much. Grandma used to say I was a lot to handle. Emily knelt down. She took Lila's hands into hers. Small and sticky with honey oat dust. I'm going to tell you something, Emily said, her voice suddenly tight but sure. You are exactly enough. Not because you try hard. Not because you're quiet or loud or sweet or stubborn. Just because you are. Lila blinked. I'm happy you're my daughter. Emily whispered. I'm proud of you every single day. And you've never been too much. Leela beamed, as if something inside her clicked into place. I think, she said thoughtfully, I want to write that on my notebook at school. Like a reminder. Emily smiled through the lump in her throat. That sounds perfect. Later that afternoon, while Lila was at piano class, Emily walked through a local bookstore downtown. She hadn't planned to stop, but there it was, a window display for a new memoir titled Leaving Quietly. She stepped closer. The quote on the cover caught her eye. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the first breath of freedom. Emily stood still. The reflection of her own face layered over the cover. Her journey hadn't ended with that awful note left on her kitchen counter. That was just the moment it cracked open. She'd learned something nobody had ever taught. Her strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply says, I won't let you hurt me again. Sometimes it whispers, I am enough. That night, after Leela fell asleep, Emily sat with her laptop and began typing. Not a letter. Not an email. But a story. The real one. She wrote the truth of what happened. The ache of being invisible. The betrayal of being replaced. The fire that lit when her child looked at her with the same wounded question she once carried. She didn't know if anyone would read it. But she wrote it anyway. Because someone, somewhere, might be standing in a quiet hallway, holding a phone in one hand and a memory in the other, wondering if she has the right to choose herself. And maybe, just maybe, this story would reach her in time. 2 weeks later, as spring folded into summer, Emily and Lila stood outside Judith's house, Eric's mother. The unexpected oasis in the middle of their storm. I brought cookies, Lila whispered, proudly holding up a foil-covered tray. Judith opened the door and lit up like a sunrise. Now that's the kind of guest every dinner needs. They laughed. And as they stepped inside, Emily realized something simple and stunning. These warm welcomes. These ordinary dinners. These chosen people was the family she had built. Not the one she was born into, but the one she deserved. That weekend, as the sun set behind their modest backyard, Emily sat on the porch while Lila read under a blanket of stars. Mama, Leela said suddenly, not looking up from her book. Do you think stars ever feel like they don't shine enough? Emily smiled softly. I think some stars shine so bright. The people closest to them forget to look. But that doesn't make them any dimmer. Just waiting for the right eyes. Lila nodded. Thoughtful. Then I hope I'm one of the bright ones. Emily leaned over and kissed her forehead. You are.